Hi, True Avatars, and welcome to your Queer Video Game Podcast. This is episode 22, and I am your host, Zoe Wild. I am a transgender and bisexual woman, and my pronouns are she, her. Joining me this week is Amy Lynn, a transgender lesbian, pronouns she, her. Hi, Amy Lynn. How are you?
Hi, not too bad. Recovering from the snow that we received here, but aside from that, things are good.
I hope everything's plowed at your place, because here, nothing has been plowed.
Here it's okay, but I've been adventuring downtown, and there's been a lot of snow climbing that I've had to do.
I'm so sorry. I know what that's like, though. And also joining me is Ekami, a pansexual woman whose pronouns are she, her. How are you doing, Ekami?
Hello, happy to be back on. I am also dealing with all the abundance of snow. Most areas have been plowed near me, but we just have mountains of like snow piles just from shoveling and everywhere. So it's been a bit hairy to get through.
Well, it's going to melt all this week, I think, because it's going to be above zero. So.
Oh, thank God.
So this week we have a bunch of headlines, including Nintendo canceling its reward program and an update on Deltarune. Plus, we have first thoughts on the new game from Life is Strange developers Don't Nod, Lost Records, Bloom and Rage. And also, the Sonic Racing CrossWorlds network test happened this past weekend, so we'll be diving into that as well. Finally, we'll wrap up with some quick predictions for Pokémon Day on February 27th. But before we dive into all of that, I have some housekeeping to get out of the way. As the show grows, I realized I should probably promote our social media handles up front. So it's important for me to ask you, the listener, to leave a comment or review on your preferred podcast platform. True Avatars has only been rated once across all the podcast platforms, and we've never received a comment or review anywhere. It not only helps with visibility, but it helps me know what you like and don't like about the podcast. Also, please follow True Avatars, a queer video game podcast, wherever you do your doom scrolling. So we have accounts on Blue Sky, Instagram, Twitter, at True Avatars, and we're also on Facebook, and we have a website too, trueavatarspodcast.com, all one word. These socials are where you can get all kinds of updates about the podcast, recent news, and giveaways. In fact, right now, True Avatars is giving away 5 Steam keys for Psychroma. That's 5 Steam keys for Psychroma, the 2D horror game from queer developer Rocket Adrift. They've generously offered these codes after the interview last week, and I do recommend going back to episode 21 to check out that interview. It's full of awesome dev stories and some future news about future happenings with their next game and maybe where Psychroma is coming to next. So go back and check that out because it's awesome. But anyway, right now across Blue Sky, Instagram, and Twitter, I'm doing this giveaway, which is live from now until March 1st, which is this coming Saturday. The podcast is recording on February 23rd, and it releases on Monday, February 24th. So that's this coming Saturday. I have 2 Steam keys to hand out on Blue Sky, 2 keys on Instagram, and 1 on Twitter. So if you have accounts on all 3 platforms, I encourage you to enter on all 3 platforms to increase your chance of winning. So the account handle is at True Avatars, and I will post the links to the giveaway in the show notes. Don't sleep on Psychroma, by the way, because it's one of the best games of 2024. So, with all that housekeeping out of the way, Amy's, it's nice to have you back on. What have you been playing?
Thank you so much. And I just wanted to mention, if you hear occasional just laughing and like light, just just noise. There's just some kids in the hallway right now, so they might be coming through. But
you might hear my neighbors as well too, so sorry.
Cool, okay. I played a couple games this past week and a half. So I was off sick for a couple weeks, and I in that time when I wasn't feeling like I was just dying in the bedroom, I was playing this game called Wavetale, which is an indie game that was from 2022. Cute little game. You're traversing a huge body of water and learning about there's this black fog and the smog that's kind of overtaken a lot of these little islands, and you're trying to figure out how to get rid of it. And it was really good. I finished it recently. And the other game that I recently played was Of the Devil. And I played, it's an episodic game, so I actually only played episode 0, which is free on Steam. It's kind of like a demo for the game. And it's a futuristic game where you play as a detective and a defense attorney, where you're trying to defend someone who's been accused of murder. In episode 0, they were accused of murdering their girlfriend. And it's like a really cool mixture of Ace Attorney, Danganronpa, probably Paradise Killers. I haven't played that game yet, but that kind of vibes. And then I've recently bought episode 1, but I haven't started it. So highly recommend both of those. They were so much fun.
Milan?
Nothing really new on my end as far as actually playing, although I have been, as is kind of the topics of today's podcast episode, I've been very interested in the news of Deltarune and the Sonic Racing CrossWorlds. And of course, the upcoming hype of Pokémon Day. But yeah, nothing aside from the silly little mobile games the last few weeks, unfortunately.
Well, what I've been playing this week has basically been everything we're talking about later. So I will dive into that much later. But first, we're going to do the news. Okay, so I've been saving a couple older news stories for this week, and there were a bunch of headlines this week, so we'll try to get through these as quickly as possible. Amy's, feel free to jump in at any point when I'm talking about these first few headlines, because they're kind of quick.
Sure.
So the first one is kind of an exciting one. The Last of Us Season 2, it's not a big story, but it's big enough to warrant telling everyone on the podcast, because Season 2 of The Last of Us is finally coming out. It has an actual confirmed date now, and that's Sunday, April 13th, and that's going to be on Max, which was formerly called HBO. That's basically the entire news story.
I'm excited for it. Yeah. I saw the poster, one of the posters recently, I think, and I when I came across it, I was like, oh yeah, that's coming out really soon. I should really play the second game pretty soon. So yeah, it's good motivation.
I'm excited for it as well, even as someone who hasn't played any of the games, and I'm not usually big on the zombie genre in general. And it's not really an uplifting show in a lot of ways, but it's still really compelling. Like I would have never guessed though that I would have out of the two preferred Fallout. But it's still really cool to have a bunch of like really high quality video game adaptations in the last few years, like between Fallout and Last of Us and Castlevania and some of those PlayStation things. It's been really fun.
Yeah, I think we're in a golden age of video game movie adaptations and TV show adaptations.
For sure.
This would be the point where normally, if we had more time, I would gab about the hopes for a good Pokemon adaptation that isn't Detective Pikachu. But we do have to move on to the next story, which is the Elden Ring Night Rain release date has been revealed. I've said Elden Ring Night Ring about 1 billion times now. But,
oh, me too.
This is, for anyone who doesn't know, it's a multiplayer Souls-like. It's a spin-off of Elden Ring. So it's been announced that it's coming Friday, May 30th, and you can pre-order it right now if that's your jam. So I know very little about Souls-likes. I've never played one. They scare me. I don't have the patience, even if they didn't scare me. But I did hear that the game, and this might have been in the first trailer, but I heard that the game has some Dark Souls enemies in it. So it's a bit of a crossover between other Souls-like, which I think is cool.
Oh, that's fun. I like that. Yeah, my partner's actually been playing Elden Ring quite a bit in the past couple weeks. So I mean, most of my exposure to Elden Ring has just been watching him play occasionally. But and the trailer that I guess I saw for Night Rain. But yeah, it seems fun. Seems like all the people who really like the Souls-like games and Elden Ring are pretty excited for this. So I'm happy for them.
Me too. And their next news story, another quick one, Dragon Quest XII is still in development. This kind of sounds like a silly headline, but it's been 4 years, I think, now since we last heard about this game. Or at least we're coming up on 4 years. It was in 2021 when they last talked about it, but this is the sequel to the classic JRPG series. I don't think they've said anything at all since 2021. No trailers, no real updates, but Yuji Horii, who's making the game, said that the team is working hard on Dragon Quest XII. They haven't said anything about platforms, but I have to imagine PS5 and Switch 2 are got to be the target platforms because those are the two biggest platforms in Japan, or at least the Switch 2 will be. And I doubt this game is a game that's going to run on the Switch 1. I think it's going to show up in the April 2nd Direct, personally. I think it's going to be one of the big blowout games that they show off.
That would be cool. I didn't even know, well, I mean, I might have just forgotten that this was announced, but I was like, oh, like I remember when you were reading the show notes ahead, I went, oh, that's cool, another Dragon Quest game, neat. But I might have just forgotten about the announcement from 2021.
I just kind of assume there's always a Dragon Quest game coming.
That's fair. There's been a lot of spin-offs lately, which is nice, so...
Oh, that's cool.
Like, I don't expect Square Enix to just be like, yeah, we're not going to make one for about 10 years, so, have fun. Like, it's, back in the day, like, Dragon Quest releases were, like, practically a holiday in Japan. Like, people would skip work and school, and people don't skip work and school in Japan. Like, it's not something that's done, but it was a huge thing that happened. A little bit cooled off now, but, it's such a big release. I remember back during the Smash Ultimate release cycle, how some Japanese fans were excited for Americans excited about Banjo, and some American fans were excited for Japan about Dragon Quest. So, I think it's exciting that it still exists, and it'll be interesting to see what form it takes.
Yeah, I agree. I think I have the... is it Dragon Quest Echoes of an Elusive Age, I think is the name. I have that game somewhere on my computer probably. And I still have to play it because honestly, I think the only Dragon Quest game that I've played is one that I had on the Game Boy Color. And I don't remember which one it was. It might have been 3 or 2, like early Dragon Quest.
Oh, it might have been Dragon Quest Monsters.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Oh, okay. True.
Which is also the only version of Dragon Quest I've ever played is anything that's Pokemon-like. Same with Monster Hunter, because I play the Pokemon versions of those games. Moving on, though, another Japanese developer with a kind of popular Japanese series here is Level 5 has announced that Fantasy Life I, The Girl Who Steals Time, has been delayed from April to May. So it's coming out Wednesday, May 21st. The Steam summary is as follows. Step into this slow life RPG where you can freely switch between 14 unique jobs, so-called quote-unquote lives, and enjoy a carefree life in a fantasy world. Fish, cook, shape the island to your liking, or team up with friends to battle monsters across the vast world.
This is probably out of scope for this podcast, but I'm really curious how like a 1 month delay happens and what that could mean. But I do have a lot of fondness for Level 5. I mean, mostly for Professor Layton reasons. But it is a very charming game developer company. I didn't know that they have, or at least like this game is like also co-developed by Concept, which is the Mighty Number 9 team of Mighty Number 9 infamy.
Okay.
But I'm again, fondness for the company. I've never played a Fantasy Life, although I did play the sort of spiritual, predecessor, which was a side game in one of the Professor Layton games.
Oh, which game?
I think the 3rd or 4th Professor Layton, but there was like My Village Life with the Professor or something, and he made this like really cute like Earthbound style avatar, and you could just run around. Like it had very little to do with problem solving, but it was this like really bare bones life sim, but it was really, really cute and kind of actually an early gender affirmation game for me. But yeah, it was a fun little thing. And they obviously super expanded it when they, did the actual Fantasy Life series.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's so cute. I've only played the first 3 Professor Layton games. Hoping to play the rest at some point. Yeah, I honestly hadn't heard of this series before, but I mean, just from the summary that you gave, Zoe, I'm like, that sounds really cute. I'm probably going to wishlist that at some point.
Yeah, a lot of cozy. I think I keep getting recommended the Cozy Games subreddit, and this seems to be the game that's talked about the most when it gets recommended to me. So I think it's going to be a popular cozy game for sure.
Nice.
And I think it's also Level 5's first game in the West in probably over, I want to say 5 or 6 years now. But I could be wrong about that.
Whenever they stopped releasing Yokai Watch, that was probably
right. Yeah,
probably the time. Yeah. I know they did release that America themed Yokai Watch quite a bit of time after the Japanese release, but I think even that was probably 5 or 6 years ago.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Nobody fact check me in the comments though, please. Our next headline, this is our last quick one, is Hades 2, which is still in early access. It got another major update recently. So the sequel to the beloved and queer hit roguelike Hades got a major update called Warsong, and it's available now. So the game is still in early access only on Steam, which, as we know, means the game is incomplete and still in development. But if you're into that, or you just want to play the game early, you can right now, and it just got another major update. And from the trailer summary, reads as follows. Our second major update for Hades 2 has arrived. Featuring all new encounters at the end of the service route, the arrival of violence-loving Ares, updates to Arcana, and resource collection, and much more.
Very cool. I haven't played the first game yet, but I have a couple friends who are enjoying early access, the early access version of Hades 2. So, but it's funny because I honestly thought, I was like, oh, early access, like that's news to me. I thought the game was fully out, like finished. But that's awesome. I mean, I'm glad that they're doing all those updates, and I think they've been getting some pretty good feedback on the second game. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's the first game is like, obviously it's based on I think Greek gods. My tired brain is trying to, like, Ares is a Greek god, right? I think it's based on Greek gods. At least and it's called Hades. What am I? Am I high? Clearly it's been a long weekend of playing Lost Records and Sonic Racing, but so it's based on Greek gods, and their Greek gods are queer as fuck, so.
Hell yeah.
All right, we have a big headline now. So the rest are actually kind of like chunky headlines, and there might trigger some big discussion too, because some of these are pretty front loaded. So from My Nintendo News, Xbox is going to show logos for Nintendo and PlayStation in their future showcases and directs. From the article, the head of Xbox, Phil Spencer, has confirmed in a new interview that the Redmond, Washington-based company will start to show Nintendo and PlayStation logos going forward in all their video game showcases. Spencer says he wants to be transparent with consumers about where people can purchase games developed by Xbox Game Studios, which now includes both Bethesda and Activision Blizzard. Phil Spencer said, I think it's just being honest and transparent about where the games are showing, and we actually even had this discussion last year at the June showcase, and by the time we kind of made our decision, we couldn't get all of the assets done, and it felt weird to have some of them in and some of them out. So that's the article, end quote. But if you go and watch any previous Nintendo Direct or PlayStation State of Play, you'll notice the multi-platform games in these presentations will only show console logos for the console of that presentation's host, which is to say, for example, if you go back to the State of Play from a couple weeks ago for PlayStation, and you watch, like, for example, the Sonic Racing CrossWorlds trailer, which is coming to every platform known to man, you'll see that there's only the PlayStation logo at the end. They don't even put like a PC thing like sometimes Xbox did before. Especially in Nintendo's directs too, you'll never see other consoles logos in there because they want you to play that the commercial they're showing. They want you to play on their console, right? So the fact that Xbox, this is really a commitment to Xbox kind of going multi-platform very seriously with their first party games. So I was wondering if you guys had any thoughts.
To be honest, I when we were talking about it, or as I was listening, I was like, oh yeah, no, I guess like I honestly haven't seen, logos for other consoles in a Nintendo Direct. Makes sense. But I mean, this is kind of exciting, I think. I mean, it's nice that it feels like it's less of a, hey, here's a competition, kind of vibe for, we want you to buy Xbox games, we want you to buy PS5 games, like all that stuff. So it's kind of nice to see that, but at the same time too, like it's I mean, when I've with the few video game showcases that I've seen that Xbox has done, like obviously they usually stick to like, hey, it's coming to Xbox Series, etc., and PC because of Microsoft, obviously, which has always been kind of nice. So yeah, I think it's nice that they did that. I would like to see big companies like this not engage so much in a like, you should buy our console because it's exclusive to this and all that. Like, I mean, there have been so many people that I know who've like, like when Final Fantasy 16 came out, I was like, "Ooh, I'm gonna get it because it's coming out on PS5 exclusive. That's cool." And a bunch of my friends were like, "Oh man, like I guess I'll just wait for PC." And I was like, "Oh, that's kind of a bummer." Like, I hate that you have to wait.
So does Square Enix, which is why they're changing that.
yeah. And same thing with like Horizon 2 when that came out. So, it's nice. Yeah. Nice to hear. I don't know. I'll see what happens, I guess. Like I'm curious to see if there's some bigger like plan that they have, or if they're literally just trying to be like, hey, we're all making games like this. We're going to be transparent about it. So
I think they just know that I'm pessimistic and cynical, and I think they're just trying to say like our Xbox games aren't selling, so please buy them on PS5.
I
mean, that's entirely valid too, I guess.
Bring back the Wii 60. Although I think at the time I had a PS3 instead of an Xbox 360. I eventually did buy one, but only for a random Japanese dance game. I feel kind of similar to like, I guess, Ekami's like last points. I'm kind of like suspicious, like why the sudden altruism? And I think, Zoe, it's as you said, it's just, things aren't going so well on the software front. Wherever we can make money, please give us money. But I think the real question is, will Nintendo and PlayStation follow suit?
No.
Probably not.
Sorry. I can tell you right now, maybe PlayStation in down the line will consider it, especially if it's like for PC games, if they ever do day and date.
Yeah.
So like, let's say Horizon 3 comes out and it's going to launch on PC the same day as it launches on PS5, or at this point, probably PS6. But point being is maybe down the road. But I think Nintendo is a hell no.
I highly doubt Nintendo. Yeah, there's no way.
They won't even put the PlayStation logo for like, well, I think when they showed off Lego Horizon, they didn't even put the PlayStation logo in the trailer for the Nintendo Direct, showing that off. And that's a PlayStation game too.
Oh yeah.
So,
and I even think for the third party, like again, to bring it back to Smash Brothers, they definitely had the copyright in regular text that showed up, but it's not like, the big Microsoft logo showed up with Steve or Banjo. It was just kind of quietly in that big list of companies on the bottom of the screen.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they're probably because they're legally required to include that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to a more disturbing news story. Normally with these layoff stories, I want to say sad, but this is not only sad, but this is like downright like horrific. So all Marvel Rivals US devs were laid off, or at least at one particular studio. I didn't look fully into this because it was like the story kept snowballing and ballooning, and I was just like, it was a lot to take in. But the gist of this message is that basically Marvel Rivals is like doing super well right now, like really, really, really well. Like I think it's like Overwatch, right? Like it's kind of an Overwatch like game.
Oh yeah.
So it's doing really well. But there's a US based support studio that's been laid off and shuttered by NetEase, the parent company. So this initially came from a Reset Era post that collected all the social media posts about it before the story broke. And the quote from the director on LinkedIn in his social media post, he said, "This is such a weird industry. My stellar, talented team just delivered an incredibly successful new franchise in Marvel Rivals for NetEase Games. And we were just laid off. Oh well, times are tough all over. Let's find these incredible people new jobs because we all need to eat, right?" And that's where he kind of stopped and he started like promoting one particular individual. But he kind of really glossed over the fact that they got laid off, and he was like very optimistic that everyone else would find new jobs, which is great. But it seems like all the layoffs in the past up till now, I thought were like, okay, these studios maybe aren't doing so hot, or they didn't deliver a game that was so popular that it like broke out, or the studio delivered a game that just completely fell flat on release, or it didn't sell well, or the game wasn't even finished. Like we know with Bandai Namco, like they canceled a bunch of games and then they laid off those teams, or put them in rooms hoping they would quit themselves. But in this case, Marvel Rivals did super, super well, and these people were still laid off. Like, what the fuck?
Oh yeah, it's so strange that I was actually just talking about this with my partner just before we were recording today, and like I remember him telling me, and I was just like, wait, what? Like I've heard tons and tons about Marvel Rivals. I've played it a handful of times, and really enjoyed it. I was like, oh, this is really cool. Like I don't usually play these types of games, to be honest, but I had a lot of fun with my friends. And like just sharing that, I was like why? What possibly could have been the reason that they're not disclosing publicly like if they're doing so well, like I don't know what they think they're gonna do. Like, I guess they'll just, if the game is far too popular to stop, chugging this train along. Like, there's no way that they're just gonna be like, no more updates. Like, they're probably gonna rehire, I guess. But I was just like, this is so strange. Like, why? I'm so confused. I'm happy that I'm happy for the perspective. That's not the word for like the voice that the director chose for that update, just to be like, well, this really sucks, but hey, these people are like clearly talented, which everybody already knows because the game is really popular. So of course, like, we like promote these people. They're really good at their jobs. Please hire them. I'm like, that's evident. That's really good. But yeah, I was just very confused hearing this news.
Yeah, what a weird, bittersweet, I guess item or feature of positivity. Like, it's really great that as you said, that the bad news was kind of glossed over, but it really sucks if it's become that commonplace where it's like, oh yeah, entire team laid off, moving on. Lots of things are wrong apparently with the North American industry.
Yeah, I'm concerned that this is like if you can't make, even if a game does well and it sells well and you can't not get laid, like, there is no winning in this scenario. Like, this sends a message that, like, you don't need to deliver a six. Like, no one, I don't know. I'm not a developer. I don't know if I would go into any job with this mindset, but it can't be good for like morale for people who've been laid off, who maybe join a new team, who think like, oh, it doesn't matter how hard I work or how good I do. Like, I'm going to get laid off if I do good work. And I'm going to get laid off if I don't do good work. Like, I don't know. It just like, I don't know what morale must be like right now in game studios. We should have had Zoe on, but she wasn't available to talk about this. But
well, it calls into question, like, I mean, job security at this point, right? Because I mean, if a game's popularity is not a good measure of like someone doing good work and they can still lay them off, like, that's why I'm wondering. I'm like, there must have been something, but like, I don't know. Like, they didn't obviously reveal it publicly. But like, it just seems so strange. Like, I don't really know why. And like, this game is new, right? Like, it's not even a year old, right? I don't
even think it's 6 months old.
Yeah, that's crazy. I don't know.
Well, on to some very, I guess, better news. I mean, it's not like the best news because it's not a release date, but it is an update on Deltarune, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show. So another update on Deltarune chapters 3 and 4. And this came from Toby Fox directly, posting on Blue Sky, and they said, still console testing, there are fewer bugs, but there's a lot to go through, in brackets, haven't even tested PS5 yet. In addition to fixing Chapter 3, Chapter 4, we also need to implement having saves from the demo carry over to the main game on consoles. We only received the technology to do this now, I hope it works. And a few weeks ago, Toby Fox also had this to say, PlayStation makes it a requirement to have trophies, in brackets, achievements, so those will be one of the things that have to be tested. I don't think they're going to like testing the trophies, though. So that's pretty much it for this Deltarune update, but I'm sure Amy Lynn has the most insight onto if this is good news or not.
I really do feel that it's very neutral news, but I guess the positive and the good news of the entire post is that Toby Fox is still being very transparent with the fans and the community as a whole, which, not like even a lot of indie developers, it's a lot of like really just kind of promotional Patreon or Kickstarter style updates. If anything, it's like, yep, still going along great. Look forward to your rewards. With Toby Fox's updates, they've always been sort of really honest and sort of as deep into the production as possible without making it really boring. There's, I think, a great insight without spoiling too much or anything. It's just like, oh yeah, here's where we've met with delays. Things are still good in other ways, so you don't have to probably worry about like a sudden 2-year delay. But yeah, I do actually wish there was more interesting things to talk about, but yeah, still good news overall.
I like to include news on Deltarune because I know it's a very queer game with a big queer community behind it. So whenever there is any news, no matter how small, I like to just put it in here because sometimes like there's not a lot of news. So I'm like, okay, what's some queer adjacent news we can include in the podcast? So I do like to keep this here. Plus, I usually have you on, Amy Lynn. So having any Deltarune news, I'm like, okay, well, at least I know Amy Lynn can talk about this too. So because I certainly don't know what to say other than like, here's the news. I'm just going to read it verbatim. So, okay. Next up, we have 2 Nintendo stories. One kind of good, one definitely not good. So we're going to start with the kind of good one because I'm very good at programming news stories, apparently. But this comes from Nintendo Everything. Nintendo on the potential impact of U.S. tariffs on its business and on the Switch. So we've talked about the U.S. government on the podcast before and their trigger-happy approach to imposing tariffs and how these might impact the Switch too, particularly for American gamers, obviously. So from the article, this Nintendo Everything article, they said, President Trump has been pursuing tariffs that would be enacted on countries such as China, Canada, and Mexico. That could affect various industries, including the video game business. Regarding the potential impact of policies, Furukawa, and he is, I think, the president of Nintendo at this current time, had this to say as translated by Nintendo Everything. Nintendo Switch is not only manufactured in China, but in places such as Vietnam and Cambodia as well. We are predicting various geopolitical risks and establishing ways to respond. So obviously that doesn't confirm anything, but this sounds to me like the price of the Switch 2 won't be affected in the US. And I know half the podcast listeners that I see every week are coming from the US. So, or at least are from the US, listening from the US. So I wanted to include this because I think the Nintendo Switch 2 is already going to be probably Nintendo's most expensive console ever at launch, especially with like cost of living being what it is right now. So even if it isn't quote unquote more expensive than any other Nintendo console, I think people are going to feel the cost of it more. I know here in Canada, $400 becomes something close to 600 Canadian, which is close to what a PS5 is at this point. So
yeah, it's I mean, the whole business with the tariffs is, I mean, I've been following it a little bit, but not closely, but it is good that like that big people in these big positions for these companies are speaking out about this, just because, like, I mean, obviously, like in Canada, like we our prime minister responded to this, but like it's nice to see more like just responses on how it can impact various other countries and the US if the tariffs are not imposed in this case on like Vietnam and Cambodia. So yeah, it's I guess we'll see what happens. Like that's kind of where I'm at, but the whole thing is just the whole tariffs thing. The whole tariffs business is just rather ridiculous at this point. So I do hope that that some kind of compromise can be established so that, you know, Trump doesn't decide that he can do whatever he wants again. So I don't know.
Well, he could also just jump in and say, we're going to tariff Vietnam and Cambodia. Or, you know, I think at one point he even said he was going to like tariff all semiconductors, which would like literally hurt every business that uses a semiconductor, which is most of them at this point. So.
Yeah, I guess we'll see.
I think we'll survive as long as it's not $599 or something along those lines.
Well, luckily, if Trump does impose tariffs, I hope like the price in the US won't affect the Canadian price, although we might see, I don't know how it works for like people buying retail, but like if our Switch was cheaper to buy here than in the US, I wonder if we would have a difficult time finding a Switch here because Americans are buying them too.
Yeah, potentially.
That would be a new one. Like usually it's us trying to buy American products. So do they even know how to buy things in Canada? Like, I'm not sure. Like, we know how to buy things in the US, but I don't know if a lot of people from the US know how to buy things here, or even if, like, does Walmart Canada ship to the US?
Amazon does.
Amazon Canada does?
Yeah.
Okay.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I think at this point, actually, so what I've noticed too is, and I'm going to confirm this next month, I don't want, as a Canadian, I don't want to support Amazon. But the website I wanted to buy from was sold out of a couple movies I wanted to import from the UK. And the last time I've ordered from the US, and I think the UK is going to do the same thing, is that now Amazon uses their, they used to like hand off their international packages to like Canada Post, for example, our government-based post office. But what I've noticed recently is that if you order from Amazon in the US and have it shipped to Canada, the same Amazon delivery driver that would bring your Canadian package also brings your American one. So Amazon now is just so globalized that I think, like, even if you go on Amazon Canada now, and I'm not sure if it applies to the US as well, but Amazon Canada, some listings are actually the American listing, and it'll say like there's an import fee attached to this item. You don't have to go to the US branch of the website anymore. The Canadian branch will just have the US listing for you now. So anyway, all that is to say is that I'm sure Americans could figure it out very quickly how they want to get what will probably be very limited stock on the Switch 2, especially here in Canada, where we have a significantly smaller population than the US. All right, we have one more news story, and this one is kind of disappointing. So, because we talked about this loyalty program back in November when we did our Queer Guide to Holiday Sales episode, which I think is episode 8, and it's a great episode. It applies to all time of year for some parts of it anyway, so I recommend going back and checking that out. But I was hoping that I could just like kind of not make another one of those for this coming year. But now that some of that information is outdated because Nintendo is ending the Gold Points loyalty program. So for anyone who didn't listen to the podcast or who doesn't know what the Gold Points are just basically cash back when you buy a game on the Nintendo eShop. So let's say you buy Mario Odyssey, you're going to get 5% of that 80 or 60 or whatever currency, 5% in your currency back to spend on a future game. And the way it works is the points expire after about a year. So as soon as you get them, there's like a 365-day countdown, and it'll expire on the same date the next year. If you buy a physical game, those points are valid to be redeemed from the cartridge within the first year of that game's release. And then those points, once redeemed, will last a year on your account, and then they will then expire. But here's what Nintendo had to specifically say about Gold Points. So they said Gold Points will no longer be earned for digital purchases on Nintendo eShop after 9:30 p.m. PDT on March 24th, 2025. Gold Points will no longer be earned on physical games that release after March 24th, 2025. For physical games that released on or before March 24th, 2025. I'm saying that too much. Gold Points may still be earned by registering eligible titles within 1 year from the original release date of the game. All earned Gold Points will continue to be valid and redeemable for 12 months after they are issued. So if you get Gold Points on March 23rd, you'll have them until March 23rd, 2026. That also means that Xenoblade Chronicles X, which releases on March 22nd, will be their last first-party game on which you can earn Gold Points. Furthermore, Nintendo also confirmed that their voucher program will not carry over to the Switch 2, wherein you can pay a flat rate for 2 vouchers, each of which is redeemable for a Nintendo Switch game. And the 2 vouchers combined are cheaper than buying any 2 games combined on the eShop separately. So I've seen a lot of people saying this is because the Switch 2 games are going to be more expensive, which is almost guaranteed to be the case. I think they'll be the same price, if not more, than Tears of the Kingdom, which was a $70 game in the US, $90 in Canada, and I'm sure also increased in other parts of the world. And I think that is part of the reason these vouchers are not going to be on the Switch 2, but I also think Nintendo is probably not going to have vouchers at all on the Switch 2. Because they don't have to. I mean, if they're getting rid of their Gold Points loyalty program and they're shittifying all their stuff, then this is gonna. I don't think the vouchers are coming back for Switch 2.
Yeah. It's a shame. I one of the things that I always really look forward to in like around the holiday season is like just sitting down and being like, all right, there's a bunch of sales going on. Maybe around this time I might have been gifted like a Nintendo Switch card, and I still like a gift card. And I also have some Gold Points that I'd like to use up because they would have been just like accrued over like a year of just buying digital games. So I would sit down and apply the points to basically apply as much like, you know, discounts as I could, including the points for these games that I buy for the holiday season. And I already was like, I've already been kind of disappointed seeing the decline of just the rewards, the Nintendo reward system and the Gold Points. Like I believe physical games used to warrant more of a a point accruement, and certainly the old Nintendo rewards like that you could get were a lot more, I'd say a little bit higher quality than what you can get now. And I don't know, just seeing this, like, here or reading this news article earlier, I was just like, okay, well, I guess that'll be fine. Like, I mean, I guess it's not a massive loss, but it's just disappointing to read.
Yeah, I think that's the sad thing, is that, like, this will make a lot of Nintendo fans sad, but I don't think it'll affect sales in any way. It's like a lot of Nintendo fans will still buy Nintendo games at the same rate that we've been buying them. I don't think it'll affect, buying a game on the Switch versus buying it for Steam or another platform. I think people who are buying it for the Switch will still do so. It's just generally kind of sad and disappointing. I am really curious, though, if this will also, like, really quietly mean the end of platinum points as well. It's weird that they didn't say the point system is gone completely, because I can't imagine there are a lot of people really racking up the platinum points and putting them to use to get the little gas station hats for their Animal Crossing game that they just canceled. Like, it's like, yeah, like that part is weird to me. It's like,
sorry to cut you off. I don't think they're going to discontinue platinum points, at least for the time being, because right now they're redeemable for profile pictures on the Switch online.
Oh,
right. Okay, that's true. Yeah.
I still remember back when, like, the platinum points and other things could be used for, like, actual physical rewards.
They still
have. Oh, really? That's
and actually,
cool.
It's funny. Yeah. This is why my question comes in, and I'm sorry to keep cutting you off, but there's a physical reward you can get right now. It might be out of stock, but it comes back in stock regularly, where you can actually get 2 pins. One is a gold point coin, and another is a platinum point coin. I wonder if after the discontinuation, if there's any of those left, are they going to still sell them?
Being like, remember when we had this? Buy a pin. Just look at it fondly.
I still have some of the Smash Brothers posters, which were really high quality.
Yeah, they were.
And I think
yeah.
And I think I got one for Kid Icarus Uprising too, and Skyward Sword. Like,
yeah, the Skyward Sword posters were nice. Yeah,
and they're like so big.
Ooh,
those
nice.
were fun.
Yeah. I remember, like, in the last. Actually, it might have been like a year or two ago, but I remember going on the rewards site and being like, oh, I wonder, like, what's all here. And I mean, for the most part, I usually see, like, pins, maybe a pencil case, lanyards and such. And the only thing that I really, like, desperately wanted was there were these cute coasters for Xenoblade 3, which had it was a set of coasters which had characters from the game that were like, they were kind of chibi drawings of them, so they were these cute little drawings, and I was like, oh, that's so cool. Like, I want a set of coasters. Like, I will shell out so much money for nerdy coasters. Like, I just have so many. And so I was like,
for your next birthday.
Hell yeah. And so I was like, yeah. So I eventually like built up enough platinum points, got it, and they're nice coasters, but I just remember looking at them being like, oh, I thought these would be, like, a little bit of a different material. Like, it seems like lesser quality than what I was expecting, but they're still nice. But I also am kind of like, wow, I don't know if I want to use these entirely all the time, because I actually am kind of scared they'll get damaged. So, yeah, it's an interesting trajectory, I think, for this reward system.
I guess also now that, Nintendo has, like, their New York store and, like, a pretty, like, cool Japanese store, there's sort of less reason to put a lot of effort into physical rewards. Like, I know if I had access to one of those stores, I'd want one of those weird, like, cut-off controller fidget things, which I keep seeing online.
Yeah.
Like, those would have been, like, the perfect Club Nintendo or Platinum Point reward things. But now they're, in a giant gachapon machine in Japan, which is probably where they do belong.
Yeah, the Club Nintendo to Platinum Point decline the downfall is like notable. I know there's a Scott the Woz video where he goes through like a ton of Club Nintendo merchandise, and you can like see like it's like statues and like all this other stuff. Every time you bought a game, there was like a code inside the cart, like inside the case, and you would flip it over. You'd like put the code in, and after 3 or 4 games, you'd have enough to get like a soundtrack or a statue or a poster collection.
Yeah, which is awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. When new Pokemon Snap came out, they did the platinum reward. You could redeem platinum rewards for I don't know if you got the pictures with it, but you got like picture frames to print out your pictures, and that's actually why we bought the printer we have now, was to print out Pokemon Snap pictures. We've used it for other pictures too, like of pets and people. But when we got the picture frames, they're like cute looking, but they're like literally cardboard. Like they're like they're pieces of shit, like physically speaking. So I think 10 years ago, if Pokemon Snap had come out on the Wii U, new Pokemon Snap that is, and they'd done picture frames, they would have been like they would have been wood or glass, like something, or plastic even, like something just nicer that was more durable. So all that is to say is that Nintendo is shitifying everything. I mean, as long as their games and their next console continues to be good, I will still be a faithful Nintendo slut.
Yep. Same.
If only there was a company that did what Nintendo don't.
I heard someone on a podcast somewhere joke like it would be cool if Sega was like, we're doing a console again, and I think they would actually be into it this time.
Oh, they'd love that. Yeah, I would.
Just call it the Dreamcast too.
They would, as soon as Xbox is off the console market, Sega could come back, be like, okay, we took our break. But that's pretty much it for news, unless anyone has any final thoughts on anything we talked about.
No, I'm good.
No.
Cool. Okay, so we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll discuss Lost Records, Bloom and Rage Tape 1, the Sonic Racing CrossWorlds Network playtest, and then quickly list our predictions for Pokémon Day, which is this coming Thursday, February 27th. We'll be right back. And we are back from our break, and we are going to talk about Lost Records, Bloom and Rage. My initial thoughts, the Amy's did not play this game, but I did, but they're going to hopefully kind of like react and bounce ideas and thoughts off what I have to say about it. But so for anyone who doesn't know about Lost Records, Bloom and Rage, or maybe saw the trailer but doesn't remember, or just wants like a little kickstart to the memory, but it's a Life is Strange, Tell Me Why style point-and-click narrative game with branching choices, and it is made by Don't Nod, who made Life is Strange and Tell Me Why. But in this case, it was made by their Montreal team, which I actually didn't know existed, which is actually kind of cool. I thought they were only based in France. So, cool. But this game takes place in 2 different time periods, so 1995 and 2022. It constantly cuts back and forth between these 2 time periods, sometimes annoyingly so, as we slowly learn what happened to these 4 girls that summer. And so the characters are Swan, Autumn, Nora, and Kat. And Swan is the main character. She's the player character. She's who you're playing as. And at the start of this game, these girls aren't friends, but they all come together to defend you, Swan, from a bully. It's actually a really cool scene. I won't spoil it too much, but that's kind of how they all come together and become friends in this one particular summer. And the game's main mechanic is actually really cool because it's you basically take out this camcorder, and when you take it out, like you're filming stuff, and it puts this nice like I want to say 90s style, but my brain is not functioning right now. But like, it's like a CRT filter over everything. Like it makes it look high contrast, and it there's edge enhancement and all that stuff that makes it look like an old like videotape, basically. And you're like recording things. You're recording things that happen. You're recording people. You're recording your collectibles, which is cool. So like, the thing that made me think of and been talking about Pokemon Snap. This game feels like Pokemon Snap because there's going to be various times in the game where you're in a forest or you're like in nature, and there's like, you got to find 15 birds and you got to film them. It's like completing a Pokedex, but for like birds and like deer and stuff like that. But the only difference is, I guess, between this and Pokemon Snap is that this game is not on rails. So you can kind of like walk wherever in this like admittedly tiny area to shoot these images, these videos. And obviously also it's video and not pictures. But doing these like little moments where you're like filming things for collectibles, all I could think of was like, it would be cool to get like a Pokemon Snap 3, but instead of like taking pictures on rails this time, is like you've been assigned to like film the new like David Attenborough style, BBC style Pokemon documentary, and you've got to go into this like forest or whatever, and you've got to film like Pikachu or whatever, and get footage. it could work so well. The controls are super simple in this game, and I know Pokemon is very much like supposed to be kid friendly, but I think for the most part, like I think the controls in this game are manageable. They could make it work if they wanted to do like Pokemon Snap 3 documentary or whatever. The other thing too, I think the game that people will be much more interested in, because it's in all the other Life is Strange, Tell Me Why type games, is that you can build your relationship with your friends, and you're kind of guided along to focus on one friend in particular, with the implication that you, Swan, have a crush on that friend. Cool. All 3 of the friends are options for romance in the game, though, and it's decided, and who you romance is decided based on how nice you are. So you'll be prompted with dialogue options, and some of them are clearly like more not mean, but like more aloof, basically. Versus like something that's like really kind and supportive. You'll like get 2 or 3 options. Sometimes like extra options will unlock based on other things you've said. And then each time you pick an option, it'll either show a heart forming with like a little ping and a little vibration in the controller, or it'll show the heart break and fade away with like another vibration in the controller and like a sadder sound effect. And that's basically telling you like, okay, you've improved your relationship with this person and grown closer. And you know, you can like, there were times I said something like that I didn't think was mean. But was like more to the point. Like there's one time where it's like you're the I think it's Autumn, the person across from you in this booth that you're talking to her in. She says like, oh, my boss is really annoying me right now. And you can have the option of like, you can either say, oh, that's okay, or do you want to talk about it? And like both of those things sound like supportive to me. I picked the first time I played it, and I only played once, but I went back through for collectibles in certain scenes, is I picked, do you want to talk about it? And you get like the heart form. But then when you pick like, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that, it actually like breaks apart, because obviously you find out later that Autumn really wanted to vent about her boss, right? So
got it.
Yeah.
That's cool. I'm actually curious about that mechanic too, because you're saying that they switch between these 2 time periods of like 1995 and 2022. But I understand that like the game is kind of guiding you towards that one friend to you like who it's implied you have a crush on as the player character. And I haven't played a full game by Don't Nod, to be honest, yet. So I know. I played most of Life is Strange.
You're a bad pansexual.
I know. I gotta play them. Yeah, it's, but I was curious about like, and like, you might not have an answer for this like yet, because I know the game's like not fully out yet, I think, but, like, I'm curious about how much your choices impact how, like, what happens with 2022 with your like relationship with like, if you see those friends later. I assume you do. Like I'm curious about how much that affects it. But I don't know.
Without spoiling too much, so the character I decided to romance is the character you meet first. Okay. And I think this character you meet first regardless in the present. So like, I'm trying not to spoil too much, but like they come into the booth one by one. Okay. And the first character that comes in is the person I chose to romance, but I didn't pick that person to romance until later in the story, because it's not like, it's like you play 5 minutes in the present and then you play 5 minutes in the past, and then like 10 minutes in the present and then like 5 minutes in the past. And it's like very jumpy. So I haven't actually seen a lot. And again, I'd have to play through it a second time and make different choices to know for sure. But I didn't notice a lot of like through line in terms of that. It's more like Yellow Jackets, where you're trying to figure out like, how did that summer fuck them up? Yeah. Okay. Back then, and how are they now?
Yeah. Okay, cool.
There are like minor dialogue things like, oh, I remember you were interested in this. And then the next, like you'll say that in the past, and then in the present day, in the next scene, you'll like reference that.
Oh, nice.
Like smaller things, like with like backstory. But like, as far as I'm concerned with the narrative, like the narrative isn't majorly affected by the choices you're making. But again, like I said, I don't know about tape 2. Like I don't know how that's going to be affected, because it's only half the game.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, no, that's fair. I mean, and that would be like so much work to like if there was like major developments or major changes between like based on your choices, like that would take so long to make all those different routes. Yeah.
And because it's more like Yellow Jackets and less like it, and those are the 2 most comparable things I can like compare them to. In Stephen King's It, like you don't really see the 27 years later until the second half of the story, right? So it would be easier if this game was like tape 1 was 1995 and tape 2 was 2022, then all that stuff could definitely be affected. But because it's so cutty between these two time periods, I think like you said, it's like really difficult from a game development standpoint to actually like implement that kind of stuff. So anyway, also, for anyone who's listening, I know I've talked about Yellow Jackets on the show in the past, but Yellow Jackets is a recent TV show that's still ongoing that has a very similar idea where there's like a plane crash in the 90s and these girls on this school trip for a sport. Again, I can never remember the sport, if it's volleyball or soccer, but they're on a plane on a big field trip to some like tournament, and their plane goes down in the wilderness, and they're like, they have to survive for an extended period of time because no one can find them. But then the show is also intercut with like the survivors in present day. And part of the reason you're watching is to see like who actually survived in the wilderness like 25 years later or whatever. And that's kind of similar, a little bit of what's going on here. Not so much the survivor aspect, but more so just like what the fuck happened. And by the end of tape 1, you still don't really have a great idea. You have some idea, but I don't think you have, and this is one of my complaints actually, which I'll talk about later, but you don't really have a full idea of what's going on. And I think by the end of it, there should have been more of oh, that's what's going on. That's our hook into the next game now, or in the next tape. But it ends on a cliffhanger that's very different from what I expected. And depending on how they go with it, I might not enjoy tape 2, but we'll see. It's still early, like I said. But what I love about this game is that it's like slathered in queerness.
Nice.
And this is why I think anyone who's queer should play this game, because I think, honestly, it feels more queer than any of the other Life is Strange games. And even Tell Me Why, although Tell Me Why is super queer. But if you want, it's like, there's not a lot of talk of pansexuality in this game, although I think anyone who's pan could also play it and relate to it a lot. But like, there's like so much bisexuality in this game, and not just like, and the first thing I want to mention is like the color scheme and a lot of shots, this color scheme and a lot of choices you make. The color scheme and like the horror elements, which I won't spoil here, but like the buy flag is like, not the buy flag itself, but the colors from the buy flag are like literally everywhere in this game. Like it's impossible to miss.
Good.
I saw a really phobic person on the internet while I was looking for information on this game say like, oh, this game has bisexual lighting. It's like for the gays or whatever. And there was a complaint, but I was like, bisexual lighting? I'm on board.
Hell yeah.
This game delivers on bisexual lighting. So
that's awesome.
Several characters, especially the core 4 characters that I mentioned. There's not all the sexualities are confirmed, but it's heavily implied that the player character Swan is bisexual. One character is definitely confirmed either bisexual or at least women loving women sapphic. And then another character who is definitely bisexual. And then the 4th character's bisexuality or sexuality in general is like, who knows? It hasn't been confirmed yet. Maybe tape 2. Maybe never. But yeah, they're just like, and it's never like stated outright. It's more like in lines of dialogue. Like one character will say like in the past, for example, in 1995, she'll talk about boys, but in the present, she'll say like, oh yeah, I divorced my husband and then I tried dating a woman last year and it didn't work out. But she never says it didn't work out because she was a woman. Just like in general, she's like hinted that like, yeah, I'm bisexual, but like the word bisexual, I don't think comes up once ever in the entire game, which is kind of cool. Personally,
yeah, I assume like that's in both the past and the present.
Yes,
like in the game. Because like obviously, like queerness in the 90s was viewed very differently than now. So, it's nice that they have like all of this queer positive stuff in the past and in the present. I think that's really cool. I've been really I found that if I'm playing a game, I'm a lot more I tend to look out a little bit more for something that would be the equivalent of like queer lighting and or just queer color usage in games, because like I was doing that a little bit with Psychroma in trying to like figure something out, and other games where I've just noticed it where I'm like, oh, that's so nice. Like, I don't know sometimes if that's the intention, but it's nice to see. And it's nice to think that that's, what they're implying. But in this one, it sounds like it is very like really, really apparent when you're playing it. And obviously Don't Nod has been very good about queer representation in games from what I've heard. So
Yeah, this game is very much the case. In fact, actually, I would say in some ways it's comparable to Psychroma, and actually there's also a Raptor boyfriend thing I noticed too in the game, but
cool.
I'm not sure it's like directly because of someone on the team played those games. But in terms of Psychroma, like this game is not as scary as Psychroma, but it definitely is scarier than any of the other Don't Nod games. So like if you're not into horror, this might not be for you. But if you're into Psychroma, this is another good game to play because the horror vibes are good, but also the queerness is very similar, where it's not like slapping you across the face with it. It's there for you to find, and it's very obvious, but also like again, like the word bisexual is never uttered. And I'm trying to think now too, back to Psychroma, if the word transgender was ever said in the game either, and I don't think
so. They just the way they present it is like they'll say like, oh, how did you know like when you found out who you are, or like when I was this gender. They just kind of give those hints that way, and then it's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. It was an interesting way to do it. I really like that game.
The other nice thing too about the queerness, sorry, you just jogged my memory here. With the girls and their sexuality, even in the 90s, there's no like, one of the characters in particular is very sapphic leaning, and whenever she kind of makes like advances or jokes, like one character does play those jokes off, although reading into it might be because she's also like figuring herself out too, and she's like writing it off in her own head and saying it out loud that way. But like everyone is very like pro LGBT in the friend group, even if they don't explicitly say it. Like when there's like hints made and stuff like that, like everyone's just super open, like when those like teasy little moments happen. So
that's nice. That's refreshing.
Yeah. So, no trans representation as far as I've seen, which is a little disappointing. I know Don't Nod did tell me why, but Life is Strange in this game specifically are very, very free of trans representation, at least the Don't Nod Life is Strange games, which is kind of shitty in my opinion. Honestly, I think one of these characters could definitely have been trans. But
well, you wouldn't have like the easy like little visual hints, because I think like Bionicle wasn't released until the 2000s, so you couldn't have those equivalent friend of Dorothy kind of statements like that. But I mean, as you said, like we'll see what happens with the, I guess they call it tapes, like the second tape, but I am always worried that that kind of thing is going to be avoided by many people in the next 4 years for no specific reason.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah, I mean, for this game in particular, like I don't think they held back on anything.
They could have just not wanted to tell that kind of story, which is cool.
Yeah. I mean, maybe they held back on a little bit. Like maybe the word bisexual was in dialogue or in text somewhere, and they just removed that just to not like. But there's already people on the Steam page even before release complaining about how the game is woke. So,
of course.
Sorry, just taking a sip of tea here.
That's okay.
But so yeah, so the story isn't complete right now. Tape 1 just came out, and I think Tape 2 comes out April 15th. Tape 1 takes about 5 hours to play through, depending on how much collectible hunting you do. It would take a lot more to 100% the game. And there is a lot of stuff that I thought I explored every nook and cranny, and I missed a lot of stuff going back. So my advice, though, for anyone who's going to play this game or wants to play is to wait until Tape 2 is out. Just for reviews, for any issues, just like, and also you can just play the whole game straight through. So.
Oh, so is it going to be just 2 tapes? They've confirmed that?
Yeah, so Tape 1 is actually called Bloom, and his second tape is called Rage. Bloom and Rage has meaning in the game. I'm not going to spoil what that is, because it is a big reveal partway through Tape 1, what Bloom and Rage actually means and what it represents. But it's not just 2 like random cool like snazzy words strung together for the purpose of the title. There is like and especially based on Tape 1 being called Bloom, like I can see how like it's a story that's kind of blooming.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's cool.
I won't say anything more about that, but sorry, go ahead, Amy.
No, I was just gonna say you've sold me. Like I really want this game. I'll probably wait till Tape 2 just because I've had I usually wait for like a full game to come out before I buy it if I can. Like even for DLC and stuff, unless I'm like really excited, like in which case like I think I just bought the day one editions of Horizon, for example. But like this seems like a lot of fun. I mostly just don't want to end on a cliffhanger and have to wait a while. So
yeah. Well, the only reason to buy this game now is I think there's a 10% discount on all platforms that it's available on.
Oh, that's cool.
Until I want to say it's until early March. So
okay.
I don't know if they're going to do another 10% discount when the second tape launches. I don't know how long after tape 2 coming out they're going to do another discount and how much it will be. But if it's something you do really want to play right now, or you're going to want to play as soon as tape 2 is out and you're worried about a discount, like you could buy it for now for that reason, but I would still wait.
Yeah.
It's like pre-ordering a game, you just never know. But
yeah.
Because I'm going to talk about what I like about it, but there are some things I don't like about it and things that I hope they fix by the time tape 2 comes out, or at least with tape 2's release, that are kind of like buggy. There's kind of a major one that I think is like kind of a big problem. But first, I'm going to talk about why I love this game, even though I've already sold you, Ekami.
Sell me further.
I relate to it a lot personally. So the main character is a film nerd who loves to watch movies, especially horror movies. She makes her own films with her own little group of friends. Does that sound familiar, Ekami? And her friends also happen to be in a band, and I had friends in high school who were in a band, and I followed them around filming them a lot, just like Swan does. So basically this game is my high school experience. If my high school experience had been in the 90s and I had actually transitioned before high school started. But it's also a story. What I like about it is a story that teaches you it's okay to not only give up on your childhood dreams, but let those dreams evolve into new dreams and chasing those new dreams with a passion. When I was growing up, I wanted to be like a filmmaker, and I still am to some extent, but where I enjoy my life right now is I enjoy kind of like, cataloging and discovering and digging into information related to my interests. And my interests are film and video games. So like having this podcast, interviewing developers. A couple of years ago, I was trying to source information on some lost Pokemon costumes from a musical from the late 90s. So that's kind of like where my passions took me after transitioning. And I'm taking the tools I learned as a filmmaker and applying those to my interests now, but I don't really want to make big Hollywood movies like I dreamt of as a kid. So I thought that was a super relatable part of the story for me. This game also has tons of movie references, especially horror movies. So like, for example, like Until Dawn has a lot of movie references. So this game does too. And what I like about this game is that it actually acknowledges that the pandemic happened. It's not set into 2022 or a few years after, so they can like kind of pretend the pandemic didn't exist. It does mention it. It does acknowledge it, not to any major extent, but there are a couple jokes and quips and just references to social distancing and stuff like that, even though it's set in 2022. For any anti-vaxxers who might be listening to the podcast, I hope not, but or I hope you're not anti-vax, but there is a joke about someone having all their shots. So everyone in the game is pro-vaccine, so you should be too. But what I didn't like about the game, it doesn't feel like a midway point when the game ends and the cliffhanger that happens. I won't spoil what the cliffhanger is, but it doesn't feel like the game has really reached its midway point when the game actually ends. There's a couple points where I was like, there's a couple parts where there's like music that comes up and a big something big happens, and like the music like feels like you can't hear dialogue anymore, and they're playing a slow like 90s indie rock song. And I'm like, okay, this is where they're going to cut the story off. And then it didn't. And then it happened again. And I was like, okay, they're not going to cut the story off after doing this trope a second time. Oh, nope, they're cutting the story off. It doesn't really feel like we've gotten into the meat of the story yet. It feels like we're just on the precipice of that. And they cut the story off on a cliffhanger. And I was disappointed by that, because that means that like either they have to do a lot of that legwork in tape 2, which feels wrong for being the second half of the story. But also it means that like, where I think there should be more meat to the horror part of the story, there isn't going to be. And I think that's also super disappointing. What else? So this is the buggy thing that I was going to talk about, is that the facial animations, they are bad.
Oh no.
For the most part. There's a couple times where like you don't notice and like it's fine, or they're really well done, but there's a bunch of parts where the mouths aren't moving. Or if they're moving, it's very, very subtle, and it doesn't match what the actual mouths are like, what the characters are saying. When the eyes move and like wince and like the eyebrows raise in relation to the mouth moving, it doesn't look like they're working together. It looks like they took 2 different mocap pieces and applied some to the eyebrows and the eyes and a entirely different mocap sequence to the mouth.
Oh, weird.
Sometimes the synchronization is off entirely. So I was a little disappointed by that because it's really distracting at times, especially when there's like these like tense or like intimate moments with the characters, and you're just kind of like, my eye is scanning the entire face of the character for like some kind of like animation or life, and it just looks wrong.
That's a bummer.
So,
but fixable at the very least.
Yeah, so I'm hoping maybe tape 2 will at least have better animations, and they'll maybe go back to tape 1 in the meantime.
Probably.
I don't know if it's just a bug or if it's like they just didn't animate them well. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a reason not to play the game, but it is distracting as hell. So if that's something like, maybe you like go find an early cutscene in the game, and if it's bothering you, like wait for a fix. Because I can see how like it might be off-putting for some people, especially if you want like that humanness of it. Like, it's kind of taken away sometimes.
Right.
Does anyone have any thoughts before I move on to my last point about Raptor Boyfriend?
I don't think so.
No.
Okay. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk so far. So there is a thing from Raptor Boyfriend that either feels like a reference or it's stolen, or maybe they just had the same idea. But in Raptor Boyfriend, when you're playing that game, every day of the game, you get to go up to your bedroom and make one phone call to one friend. And that friend, whoever you call, is you're building the romantic relationship up with them. Ekami, do you remember that from when you played Raptor Boyfriend?
I do, yeah. When you're making the phone call to be like, it's I think it's as early as like the first what would you say, chapter episode? I don't remember.
Yeah, definitely. Every chapter is one day of the school year.
Yeah.
And I think all 7 days you can choose to make a call. This game has that exact same thing. Only once, but when you make the phone call, you get to enter the number yourself. But you have to pick one friend, and they don't tell you that either. Like, Raptor Boyfriend doesn't tell you that, but Raptor Boyfriend not telling you that is kind of forgivable because when you do it in Raptor Boyfriend, you know the next day when you make another call, you're like, okay, I get to call one friend, right?
Yeah.
This game, you only get to do it once, but whoever you pick builds up that relationship with the character that you pick.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So I thought it was very funny that it was basically the same thing where you like hide in your room, you make a phone call, you pick a friend to call.
Yeah.
You know, you kind of listen to their problems, and then, you know, your relationship points go up with them.
And isn't Raptor Boyfriend, please correct me if I'm wrong, isn't Raptor Boyfriend set in like the 90s? 2000s?
Yeah, I think it's 97.
I thought this funnily enough.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not unusual for like, even when I was a kid, like, and this was not the 90s, but I would call my friends like after school or whatever, you know, in the evening. Of course, I always had time to call more than one friend if I wanted to. It's the part where you pick one friend and it builds up the relationship with them, where I kind of feel like this feels like Raptor Boyfriend to me. Yeah. So.
I mean, and that's fair. Like, I mean, there's a lot of like for dating sim like games. Like, I mean, I'm thinking about like Dream Daddy, for example. Like, if you have like a dad that you want to go for, like you have the option to go see many. Like once you have, you know, you have your conversations and you're like, okay, I think I'll go to the cafe to see Matt, or I think I'll go to this other place, talk with Brian. So, I mean, like, the options are there. It's just, in this specific case, it is amusing that it is a situation where you're sitting down and you want to call a friend, but you get to choose who you call.
And actually thinking about it now too, the room is laid out exactly how it is in Raptor Boyfriend.
Oh yeah? That's really funny.
Yeah. I don't think any of this is intentional. I just think
it's a funny coincidence for sure. Yeah.
Sorry, Amy Lynn, it looked like you were about to say something.
No, I think just like, you know, all rooms in the 90s were laid out in the same way. The only thing that really, like, when you were both describing that, I was thinking about Arcade Spirits and how at the end, not the end, actually kind of near, I guess, 3/4 of the way through, the AI just basically goes like, I think you should choose this person, but whatever you want, you can give it a shot, which I think was kind of an interesting and unique way to approach that kind of dating sim choice type of thing, which I think, you know, that game does pretty well overall. But yeah, I think funneling is kind of an issue with most dating sims and visual novels in general. So it's interesting to see games that are, visual novel hybrids, let's say, or taking elements from them, and seeing how much or little they take from that kind of approach.
Mm-hmm.
And to be fair, I say it's romance because there is like romantic leanings towards this relationship you build with the person, but there's never like a date or a kiss or anything. Maybe in tape 2 there is, but like for the most part, it's just more like vibes where it's like a crush.
Mm-hmm.
And it informs like, again, how this character kind of reacts to you. But we're going to move on to Sonic in a sec. I just want to say overall again, for Lost Records, Bloom and Rage, I'll say if you like Life is Strange and tell me why, and you like horror, this game is for you. But if you don't like horror, or you like, it gives you the willies or whatever, stay away.
Mm-hmm.
But also wait for tape 2 to release first. But let's move on to Sonic Racing CrossWorlds, the network test. Amy Lynn, while I take a drink and recover my voice from the TED Talk, can you just kind of introduce what this game is?
Yeah, sure. So Sonic Racing CrossWorlds is the, fourth asterisk Sonic racing game. The asterisk is there because, of course, there was Sonic R, which was the on-foot Sonic racing game. There's Sonic Drift and Sonic Drift 2 for the Game Gear, which was the first Sonic in a car game. There's also the Sonic Riders series, which factors into this game a little bit. As well as Sonic Rivals, which was sort of a racing game. But anyways, so this is the fourth sort of big console release Sonic in a car game. And it's usually, and in the case of this game as well, not just Sonic, but also guest characters as well. So you have kind of famously, I think Ryo from Shenmue, in a forklift, usually Ai is there, Ulala, like lots of different Sega characters. That is, except for the most recent game, which was Sonic Racing Transformed, where, not Transformed, what was it? Team or something.
Team Sonic Racing?
Team Sonic Racing, that's the one, which had a story mode. So it didn't make much sense.
Shame on you for forgetting that, Amy Lynn.
Well, I did not have a current gen console for the last few generations. So I was unable to play it. It is, so this new one, the main gimmick is these giant warp rings, similar to the Sonic movies, if anyone has seen any of those three, that will send you into a completely different setting from the track that you initially choose. So the person in the lead of the race can choose which sort of extra dimensional world to go to, or I think sometimes they can select like a randomizer. And there's still the transforming elements. So your vehicle can fly or go over water, although I think the transformation is a little bit less extreme, as in Transformed. There is no sort of team mechanic like in Team Sonic Racing, but there is an incredibly rare sort of unlock of conversations that characters can still have with each other. So I've been, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, sort of having a look at what people are thinking about this game. And one of the criticisms is that there are these cool little dialogue moments, but people played for like 10 hours and only encountered them once or twice.
Oh, wow.
So it seems to be really random whether you get these little, and they're like 6 seconds long, like they're not that significant, but it's a shame because I've listening to them, they're really kind of cute, and like Shadow going like, "Good job, Cream." I mean, not that cheerfully, it's more like, "Good job, Cream." That would be a little bit weird for Shadow, but it's
I don't think I came across any of those.
No?
So it's like that's kind of disappointing because there's a lot of really good character animations. It's not just sort of floating heads in behind the vehicles. Like characters will jump out and do little flips and like animations that really reflect their character, which is really good to see. There's some great music, as usual with Sonic games, some great remixes and new songs, but a little bit hard to hear in the clips that I've seen. That's one of the other main criticisms, is that it's a little bit too chaotic, which even from watching the videos, like I definitely agree with. Like I kind of wish I could see more of these really cool stages and hear more of the really cool music, but there's a lot of crashing and particle effects and explosions and things happening. The other sort of main thing that's exciting me about this game is that it has the return of the extreme gear from Sonic Riders. So on the box art / main key visuals is Jet the Hawk, who's the sort of main rival character for the Sonic Riders series. So it's really cool to see him back and sort of in a semi-prominent position, at least as representing the Extreme Gear vehicle type. And the Extreme Gear are basically hoverboards. So I'll be very interested to see how those turn out. We have a roster of, I think, about 23 characters right now, which is a pretty huge starting roster. And
there were actually spaces for 28 characters in the demo.
I'm sure
not all of them were available, but there were 28 slots. Yeah,
I'm sure there'll be even more because I'm not sure if there'll be skins or full characters, but Sega's already mentioned that as I guess a digital deluxe bonus, you can get characters based off of Sonic Prime. Which is the Sonic Netflix show recorded in Canada. So, we get our CanCon. I'm not sure if they'll hire the voice actors from that series for those characters. I would hope so, but hard to say. But that's a really cool little bonus. And I'm really hopeful that along with the Sega guest characters, we get classic, the classic Sonic cast. So, classic Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Amy, Eggman, as well as Fang and Mighty and Ray, and Trip, and all the other kind of cool classic characters. I don't think to, preemptively disappoint people, I don't imagine we're going to get any Archie / Sonic Saturday morning characters. I think IDW comic characters, so your Tangles and Whispers, and maybe even some of the more recent characters like Surge are possible. I don't think super likely, but I'd give them about a 50% shot. So yeah, lots of exciting stuff with this newest Sonic game. It looks really good, and thankfully Zoe has some hands-on impressions.
Mm-hmm.
I do, yes. Thank you for that. I can actually skip a couple of them because you covered a lot of stuff there. I did approach it though as a racing game and not so much as a Sonic fan. I enjoyed it. It's definitely, we have Mario Kart at home though. That's my take. Is that no matter how good this game is, and I don't think it's amazing. I liked it enough, but I think this game's biggest problem, even if it's perfect, is that Mario Kart 9 comes out this year, and this game is going to get lambasted.
Yeah.
Purely from the vicinity it is to Mario right now. But what I will say about the game is that I did enjoy playing it, especially getting to play it over the weekend, early. It was pretty polished for a game that's probably not coming out until the fall. There were, I think, maybe 5 or 6 tracks available, and then a bunch more were available through the portals that you selected games. So yeah, whoever's in first gets to pick a side of the track, and it's either you can see the portal and you can see the world through it, or you can drive through one that's a bunch of question marks and it's random. I never got first place at that point. I got really close once, and then I got bumped out. As Amy Lynn said, it's a very chaotic game. It's too chaotic. I did see, I think Good Vibes Gaming was talking about this too. They said it was very chaotic, and I agree with that assessment, is that it's a little more busy than Mario Kart, and I think that's to its detriment. But I did enjoy. I liked the way the racing felt. I didn't okay, how should I break this down? I'm going to talk about what I did like and what I didn't like. I played as Cream, so I first built a car as Cream. I didn't realize there was an orange themed Sonic character. I just don't know. I've seen Cream before, but I've never looked her closely as like the orange character. So when I saw that her car was like orange and white, I was like, this is adorable. Plus she has a pet chow, which I loved. But then as I was playing today, I decided to change up my character because I wanted to see what the other cars were like. And you can put any character on any car, by the way, but I decided to associate a character with a different build of a car. So I chose Omega, this like robot character who kind of looks like Robot Eggman. Again, I know nothing about Sonic lore, and I'm sure Amy Lynn is sitting there like sternly looking at me like, Zoe, you're an idiot. But, I thought Omega was hilarious. So also I want to acknowledge that I shouldn't have said idiot. I'm trying to get away from able to speak, so I shouldn't have said that. But anyway, regardless, I think Omega is hilarious because anytime anything would happen in the race, your player character would react to it. So like if you got bumped, like they would like say something. Or if you got like a speed boost, they would like react positively. And Cream would say normal things like, yay, I did it, or woo, or hey, watch out. Whereas Omega is like optimal, superlative. Just like very matter of fact, like a robot. Like if you get a speed boost, he's like optimal. It was killing me. I've never seen this character in my life, and he's gonna be my main if I play this game. Like I'm gonna always play as Omega and if you win the race, or if you get a good place in the race, he's like superlative. Like Cream is like, yay, I did it, let's go again. He's just super. Anyway, sorry.
Oh my god, that's so
good. You couldn't select any of your tracks. You couldn't like it was all by voting because it was online. So 3 tracks plus a random one would appear and you would pick. Occasionally my tracks did get picked, but also it seemed every race had 5 to 6 humans and 6 to 7 CPUs, depending on how many people were in the race. I never saw a race that was full of all people. I assume that was for testing reasons, but maybe they just didn't have enough people playing. I know there were issues with people who signed up for the wrong network test. So it's possible the US test had less people in it than it should have. But I liked the music. The music carried a lot of it for me because the racing was fine, but I really liked, like the music was just so good. I was humming it for hours after I played the first 45 minutes or so on Friday night before I was pulled away. I liked the equipping gadgets to the cars, being able to like decide like, you know, like fit your racing style and give yourself like boosts where you need it. So like I knew I was going to collide with a lot of cars, so I decided to make it so I got a speed boost every time I hit a car, just like in Mario Kart 8. But then I realized later that like every time you make a contact, even though you get a speed boost, you lose rings, which are like the coins, and like the amount of rings you have determine how fast you can go. And I think Mario Kart is similar, but in this case, it's a very vast difference between like if you have 5 rings versus 100, like there's a huge gap in how fast you can go with the amount of rings. And I did not like that. But then eventually I unlocked a thing that was like, you can have, it'll have the amount of rings you need to get top speed or whatever. So I attached that and the contact thing, and then I started doing better in the races. The drifting felt great. Like I said earlier, one of the things I didn't like is that the racing is done with the X button, like the cross button on the PlayStation controller, and then your drifting is done with the trigger. And I know that's the same for Mario Kart. It's very similar. I personally don't like racing like that because my thumb is just pressed on the X button the whole time and it starts to hurt. It also makes the button eventually, like over time, your X button or your A button is just gonna like just be a little indented into the controller, which makes the controller feel not so nice to play, especially if you're playing a non-racing game. So I really wish the driving was done through the trigger, the acceleration was done through the trigger. Flying was fun once I figured out how to really do it, but it was nice that the controls were inverted to start off. Water racing was also fun. I like how you can kind of slow down and do a turn and give yourself a boost instead of drifting when you're racing on water. I had a lot of negatives though, like, and I think these negatives are what is going to pull it down away from Mario Kart. So like I said, the X button being your accelerator. When you get to the end of the race, there's a bunch of speed boosts, and you're clearly like in the starting area of where you're coming up at the end of the lap. For example, when you're coming to the end of the race, your position in the race disappears from the screen and doesn't appear until like 5 to 10 seconds after you finish the race. So one of my favorite things to do in any racing game is when I'm in that last stretch and I know someone might pass me at the last minute or I might pass someone else at the last minute. Knowing where I am motivates me because like I'm in 8th or 9th. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to like try that hard to like get ahead. Or I really want to know, like, I don't want to fall any more behind. Or if I'm like in 1st or 2nd, like I want to know, like, did I finish 1st or 2nd? In any other racing game, that position that you finish in is on the screen the whole time. But for some reason in Sonic Racing CrossWorlds, they take it away. and it's not visible for 15 seconds. And I've got to tell you, that pisses me off to no end. I don't like it. I want to see how I did. I want to see how I'm doing up until the last possible second. There is no reason for you to hide that from me. I don't know why they did that. I hope it's just a network test thing and they're going to bring it back in the final release. I don't know if that's just a Sonic Racing quirk from other games. Maybe Amy Lynn, you can speak to that.
I can't remember anything like that.
Well, it just drove me up the wall. I didn't like it. What else didn't I like? Like I said, I did say earlier, your speed is locked to how many rings you've collected. In Mario Kart, it's the same, but it's not as extreme difference between like 1 and 10 coins. Like if you have 2 coins, like you're still going to accelerate pretty well and your top speed will be pretty decent. But if you have all 10 coins, you'll do just a little bit better. Whereas in Sonic, like if you have zero rings, like you're going to be losing pretty bad. It takes fun out of the racing. Like, it's also, like I said, like it's so chaotic. It's really hard to tell what's going on at times. Like you can't hear the music. You can't kind of enjoy some of the voices, but also you just can't like, I'm just like constantly colliding with people. Even if I'm getting a boost when I collide with someone, like I'm literally colliding with people at all times. It's just way too much going on. And that's not even with like, that's without, before you even consider the fact that there's items. And my other problem is that a lot of the items are basically Mario Kart items reskinned. So it's a little disappointing that like, there's like the tornado that stops you from getting hit by items coming at you. There's a boxing glove that's basically a red shell. There's like, I don't know what they are. They're like these little blue watery ghost looking things that like are your like mushrooms, and you get like either 1 of them or 3 of them. And I get it. It's a Mario Kart clone. There should be some similarities, but there's even like, what do you call it? The gooper or the goober? Oh my God, the squid.
The blooper?
Blooper. Thank you. Yes. Oh my God. I feel like a bad Mario fan, but there's like a blooper equivalent that like sprays slime at your windshield. So just, I don't know, it felt like we have Mario Kart at home. It really did. I think, as fun as it was, I don't think it's gonna outdo Mario Kart 9. Even if Mario Kart 9 launched in a terrible state, I think still Mario Kart 9 is gonna sell better. So anyway, all that is to say, I thought the game was fun. It needs some fine tuning. Again, aside from the music and like the water and the flying, it like nothing stands out too much. And it's weird that they're not like leaning into the flying more, because I think Diddy Kong Racing is like famously one of Nintendo's best racing games, at least among fans who played it. Better than Mario Kart. Like people who played Mario Kart 64 and Diddy Kong Racing on the N64 agree that Diddy Kong Racing was better because it had like different styles of racing, like the flying. So I think if Sonic Racing CrossWorlds could really lean into that a little bit more, and like kind of like it might have an edge over Mario Kart. The other thing I had an issue with is that the races are very short, and it didn't seem like any of the portals that you race into, and I love the portals, by the way, I want to make it clear, I thought the portals were a super cool thing. The way they did it made it much easier to render than in Ratchet and Clank. So like they're not rendering. If your opponent ahead of you goes through the portal, you cannot see them past the portal. It will show you where you're going to land, like, but it's a pre-rendered thing of like, okay, if you're going to fall into the track, you'll see where you're going before you enter the portal. But that's how they're going to get it running on Switch and Switch 2, is they're not rendering anything beyond those portals. It's just a pre-rendered video file that they've put a filter over to make it seem like it. But what I did notice is that like none of the portal tracks are selectable. So maybe this will change, but like there's like a volcano world, for example, where you're like flying through all these fiery dragons and stuff. I don't see that as a normal track that you can like choose. And
yeah, they're separate. So the portal worlds are completely separate than the main track. So there's like, I think currently a list of like 24 or so like main tracks, and then like 15 portal worlds according to the website. So yeah, they're kind of different classifications of courses.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't mind that, but I don't know. I thought the races were short too. Like you do 1 lap of the regular track. Then you do 1 lap of the portal track, and then you come back and you do 1 lap of the regular track. I thought it was going to be like you're doing half the race in one track, half the race in the other, maybe. Excuse me. I'm sorry. But yeah, so that's, I don't know, a little disappointed, but like it's still a really cool mechanic. As you're racing towards the portal, the music changes and it like it pumps you up. You're like trying to get that first place so you can pick which portal you want to fly into or race into.
Yeah.
So it's still really fun. Like if they lean into that gimmick a little bit more, I think like it's those things that's going to give it the edge over Mario Kart 9 for me. But I will say I'm still going to buy it and play it. I just think it could be a little bit better, I guess, in my opinion. But
that's fair.
Like there's just also a polish to the way the racing feels too, that it just doesn't, like Mario Kart has a polish that this just doesn't. in my opinion. And I haven't even played Mario Kart 9. I'm just comparing it to Mario Kart 8 at this point. But
I mean, Mario Kart 9 might be kind of not great. Who knows, right? Like Mario Kart 8 was huge, and they really liked making all those updates because they were like, this is a good selling game. So they have a lot to live up to if they want 9 to be good. And I mean, of course, there is going to be polish, but I mean, 9, I don't know. It might be like hey, this is a Mario Kart game. Certainly a Mario Kart game. I don't know. Maybe this one will have more of an edge in comparison. I don't know.
I guess we'll see.
The portals do sound really cool though. Like I saw the trailer for CrossWorlds, and I was like, oh, cool. Like I could see the obvious, like, you know, Mario Kart-esque influence there. And I haven't played, I think, any Sonic racing games. I didn't really know that there was a whole series of them, which was awesome. I probably honestly just forgot because I haven't played a Sonic game fully before, but seeing CrossWorlds, I was like, oh, this actually looks really fun. Like I would definitely play this with a group of friends, just like either couch co-op or online or what have you.
Yeah, no, it'd be great for that. Like I said, I hope there's like some more polish put on the game. But for the most part, like, it's got all the right stuff in there to be a good racing game, and it is a fun racing game. They just need to, I think, pull back on I think if they at least at the very basic level pull back on the amount of chaos that happens in each track. Like, it really didn't feel like I could ever. My favorite thing in a racing game is to just find like a good stretch, whether I'm in first or last, just like a good stretch where like I'm kind of unhindered to just kind of enjoy the weaving and I thought the tracks were very forgettable from a layout perspective too, but like the tracks are very pretty. Like every single track I went through, like visually looks great, but like from a track layout racing perspective, I was just like, none of these are very memorable or super fun to play. Like when I play Mario Kart or Hot Wheels, I'm like, wow, I see what makes this good track design. Whereas this game was just kind of like, yep, there's a turn. Okay, yep, another turn. Cool. Oh, okay. And to be honest, maybe the track was hindered by the fact that I kept getting destroyed by my enemies like literally every 3 seconds. Which like a little bit of that is okay. Like Mario Kart has that, but like in Mario Kart, like you can go a good like 5 to 15 seconds of like not being hit by a shell, and it's easier to dodge the items. Yeah. Sorry,
I do feel I was just saying like at least 15 seconds in Mario Kart, depending on your skill, and the game. Mm-hmm. I do feel that this game's I guess positives are really going to probably be that Sonic fan service or that Sega fan service that even like a Mario Kart can't really deliver or doesn't want to deliver that much. Like most of the like fan service or member berries, however you want to put it, from Mario Kart comes from what is the Rainbow Road song and track gonna look like and sound like this time. And, you know, whatever returning tracks exist, because, you know, classically, you know, the Mario Kart series doesn't use, you know, franchise music in their levels aside from like the guest character levels. So like F-Zero, Yoshi, like they'll have the songs from the games and even cool remixes, but Mario Circuit isn't going to have like the Mario World theme or anything. Versus most of these Sonic racing games, including CrossWorlds from what I've seen, have really interesting covers and remixes of Sonic music, but it's also remixed in such a way that it's not like super distracting either, which I think is really cool.
The music is really good. Like it's so catchy. Like the menu theme, it's stuck in my head even now. Like it's so good. If they put the soundtrack on Apple Music, I'm going to be listening to it on loop because it's so good. And to be honest, good music will make me play a racing game. So I just hope they just make it a little bit more fun. Like the only time I had unhindered racing at any point for any extended period of time that was like longer than 3 seconds was if I was in last place. That was it. If I was anywhere above 12th place, like I was getting hit like every 3 seconds, and it just doesn't make it fun at a certain point. The other thing, actually, I forgot to mention this, is that the items respawn really fast, much faster than Mario Kart, and I like that. If someone is like half a second in front of me and they get an item, it was very rare that I didn't get that same item box following them.
Oh, nice. So, okay.
I do like that
that's
about
forgiving.
it. Because, like,
okay.
yeah. Anyway, that's all I really have to say about it.
I do want to make sure I keep my Sonic fan card. Cream's cheese pet is his name is Cheese, so we have
so
Cream and
cute.
Cheese.
Oh,
Also, Cream's mother's name is Vanilla, so they have a whole kind of dessert theme going for
cute.
them. E123 Omega, to give a quick bio, is the last in the E series of robots made famous by E102 Gamma in Sonic Adventure.
Right.
And Omega is an angry robot who wants to destroy all Eggman's robots because he's angry. And
Who hurt him?
he is so great. Even in the comics, he's sort of this like blunt, like, you know, it's like, oh yes, let us destroy everything kind of thing, but you know, theoretically in a robotic voice. So yeah, very, very fun character. All these characters are fun, and I feel that that's another thing, not necessarily an advantage over Mario Kart 9, but if they do have those little dialogue snippets, that's something that's never going to happen in Mario Kart, right? Like Toad isn't going to take 10 seconds to talk to Waluigi in the middle of a race, but you know, Jet the Hawk is going to talk to Wave or talk to Sonic for a couple seconds and say something fun, or you know, Big the Cat is going to look for Froggy and ask if Omega's seen Froggy, and Omega's going to be like negative. And yeah, it'll be fun if they do that kind of thing. I hope they do.
Yeah, that sounds really fun. And I was going to say earlier too that when we were talking about the music, is that is something that I have always heard, as that's always been like a highlight for a lot of Sonic games, is that the music is always stellar. Like it just hits every single time.
Any final thoughts from anyone on Sonic Racing CrossWorlds network test before we move on?
I'll probably buy the game at some point when it releases. So
I'm interested to see what the DLC characters look like, because the starting roster has been leaked. It is pretty much as most Sonic fans would expect. The only kind of mild surprise, and she's in the trailer, is Sage
Sniper?
from Sage.
Oh, sorry,
from,
Sage. Sorry,
yeah,
you're right.
From Sonic Frontiers. So the pretty like the newest character. So Eggman's kind of AI daughter type character shows up.
Okay.
So that's fun. But and then we have the Sonic Prime downloadable pre-order bonus type of things. But I'm sure there will be those Sega characters, and yeah, I'm excited to see what the roster expands to, because it looks like this is probably going to be the biggest Sonic Racing roster ever.
Well, on that note, we are going to move on quickly to a very mini segment. We're going to talk about our Pokémon Day predictions, because Pokémon Day is like 4 days away. The Pokémon Presents was announced for 9 a.m. EST or 6 a.m. PST. Check your time zones, obviously. I'm not going to list all of them, but I'm going to list the ones that are most relevant to the podcast, because we're all local to Toronto here. But I thought I would just make it very simple, and we would all say one realistic prediction for the Presents and one unrealistic prediction / thing we really want but probably won't happen. And to start it off, I won't go first, but my partner Nicole, who's going to be on our Pokemon Presents episode this coming week with me and Amy Lynn, she has some predictions. So her realistic prediction is ZA gameplay footage. So that's Pokemon Legends ZA, which is the next game that's supposed to come out this year, is we're going to see footage and a release date. And her unrealistic prediction / thing she really wants to see, and we're going to have a long conversation about this privately later, but she wants to see Gen 10, a teaser for Gen 10, and maybe a sneak peek at new Pokemon or a new region. So, anyway, who would like to go first?
I probably could. Perhaps.
Okay.
I will say, like, as a disclaimer, I'm not, I would say maybe as, I haven't played as many Pokemon games, and as, like, Pokemon's not something that I follow super closely. So if there's something that I say where, like, if I'm like, oh, this is a prediction, and one of you can jump in and say, oh, that's been announced, I'd be like, oh, my bad. Like, you know, like, I totally don't know if anything I say has actually been confirmed. But I think for a realistic prediction, I was thinking, I think we'd get a release date for ZA for sure. Unrealistic prediction. I think probably I would say I would like to see I'm trying to think. I'd probably like to see some announcement that pertained to a remake for oh my god, what was it called? For like not Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee, because I know those are technically remakes of like the originals, yellow and red and blue and all that, but like, and it like another basically remake of those OG games, but in the current style of the Pokemon games, in that very
like an open world Kanto kind of game.
Yeah, not what would you call that? Isometric kind of 2.5D. Yeah, I'd like to see that. I probably would invest in that. But that's also because like most of the Pokemon games that I have played have been like, well, have been basically yellow remakes of those games. So like Leaf Green. I really enjoyed X, so that's why I'm looking forward to ZA Legends being in the same kind of city, I think. And then a little bit of Pokemon Snap, and I haven't played like any of the of like the really recent games, I'd say. So yeah, I'd like to see that. I don't really know if that's an unrealistic prediction because I mean they love remaking games, but I think maybe
of all the unrealistic predictions, that's definitely not so unrealistic.
Yeah, you can tell I don't play much Pokemon, but yeah, I think that's probably what I'd like to see.
Fair, Emilyn.
I think my realistic prediction is that there will be a boring amount of time spent on Pokemon TCG Pocket. I don't exactly know what boring amount means. I think it'll mean like 10 seconds or like 7 minutes. But I think whatever amount of time they spend on it, it will seem like a waste of time, even for people who are fans of the game. And my unrealistic hope is that like 30% of the Pokemon Presents is on like all the different like Netflix style series. So like, you know, some new Netflix show and the Wallace and Gromit team, Studio Aardman Pokemon one and Pokemon Concierge, like, you know, yeah, season 2, it's coming out really soon. And we have like even longer episodes somehow because we have more people doing stop motion. Like I do want these like world expanding, you know, immersion type of things. I've really loved all of the like Pokemon, what do they call them? Like Poketoons, the Twilight Wings, the Pokemon Generations, like all those little independent animated projects. I know, like I loved, and I'm sure you loved, Zoe, when the police officer, I think, used Magnemite as like an actual lockpick type of thing. Like I just love things like that. And with Pokemon Concierge, like just Pokemon like interacting with people in the world. Yeah.
I think they're going to show something for Concierge Season 2 for sure, because they're putting all 4 episodes on YouTube for around the time of the presents for public availability.
I was going to say, I was like, I heard something about Pokemon Concierge, and I was like, Googling, I was like, yes, it was the episodes.
Oh, that's exciting then.
Yeah.
So I think of those shows that you mentioned, like I know there's supposed to be a live action Netflix show in production and all this other stuff. There is an episode, not an episode, but like a short done by the same team that did Suzume.
The Dragonite mail person or mail.
Yeah, they're doing like a Dragonite delivers mail kind of special episode. Which is coming out on Pokemon Day. So it's definitely, I don't think it's that unrealistic that we might see something. I don't think we'll see anything about if the live action was in production. Or like moving forward right now, we would know because the film industry is less tight on things. Like when a writer gets hired or something else, like that like Variety or Deadline or THR, like immediately they're like, oh yeah, someone got hired to do this. Or
but if they
like
haven't,
directors.
If they haven't announced it, that could be like still I can keep my unrealistic prediction that like, oh, here's a bunch of concept art from the thing that will start soon, and then development hell.
Yeah. Maybe. Oh, I really hope they do the live action soon, although I've canceled my Netflix. And the last day I'll have Netflix is Pokemon Day, ironically. So if they said, like, hey, here's the live action trailer, it's out today, I'd be like, fuck! Because there are very few things that would make me get my Netflix subscription back after, I just hate Netflix. I had a long list of comments and why I canceled Netflix when they asked me why I was canceling. I was like, well, Dave Chappelle, how you treat your trans people, how you do, the fact that you don't have Blu-rays, all this other, like, I listed a long, and the fact that I was trying to watch Cobra Kai season 6 and it kept freezing only on my TV, but when I watched it on my phone or my partner's iPad, it didn't freeze. So it wasn't our internet, it was just Netflix being awful. So anyway, that all that is to say is fuck Netflix. Let's hope that series goes somewhere else. But if it does happen, I guess I have to resubscribe because I am a slut. But anyway, so my realistic prediction is a disappointingly short trailer for Legends ZA. But we will get a release date, and it will be for sometime between May and August. So even though we won't get to know very much about the game, there will be like a very quick wave of marketing in the lead up to the game's release. It could be a November game. I'm not ruling that out, but I do think it could come sooner than that just because of what they're doing with the TCG. And I've talked about it on other podcasts, and in the interest of time, I won't. But let's just say there's a TCG set with Megas coming out. It's supposed to be well before the end of the year, and it has to come out after the game comes out. So the game must be coming sooner than the fall. My unrealistic prediction was going to be something different when I initially sent you all my show notes. But after playing Lost Records, Bloom and Rage, and thinking about it, my unrealistic prediction is Pokemon Snap 3 with video shooting instead of pictures like Lost Records, Bloom and Rage. It's basically what I pitched earlier. If they announce that, the panties are off.
Give me that David Attenborough documentary style.
I mean, in a normal way. I'm not talking like Vaporeon panties are off. You know what I mean?
No, obviously not.
Like, I'll just be happy, you know?
Yeah. Nice.
But yeah, so that's our Pokemon Day predictions. I guess we'll see. We'll come back to these predictions maybe on Pokemon Day because we're planning to record a segment that day that will go into our next episode, which will release next Monday. But Pokemon Day, I'm very excited for this. I've been waiting a year for news on this game, and I did say last April, I'm like, I don't think we're going to hear about this game until next Pokemon Day. So it's been a year of no news on this game. So
fair, yeah.
We don't know what a Legends Pokemon game actually is. Because the first one was obviously like this historical, like set in the past and talking about ancient mythology, and you're throwing Pokeballs, but battling isn't really that important.
Yeah.
But we don't know if like this is a modern day game because I was like actually watching the trailer again, and you can't really tell what time period it's set in because it's all done with like line art.
Right. But
I was like looking at the handbags on one of the characters, and I was like, that looks kind of like a modern handbag. I don't think someone in the 1800s would have that. So does that mean it's a modern day game? So I'm starting to go a little off the wall, waiting for news. But anyway.
Guess we'll find out.
Thank you both for joining me this week. It went a little bit longer than I expected, but I'm glad we got through everything. Glad to have you both back on. So.
Oh, thanks for having us. Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
And that just about wraps up this week's show. Thanks, True Avatars, for joining me and us for another episode of your Queer Video Game Podcast. If you've made it this far into the episode, I really appreciate you taking the time to support queer-made content, which is a big deal. If you want to support the show, it would be really great if you could leave a rating, review, or comment on your preferred podcast platform. I welcome you to check out the website, trueavatarspodcast.com, all one word. That's trueavatarspodcast.com. You can also find the show on Blue Sky, Threads, and YouTube under the handle @TrueAvatars, all one word, and on Instagram under True Avatars. Don't forget, True Avatars is giving away 5 Steam keys for Psychroma, the queer horror game from Rocket Adrift. Check out the show notes and the True Avatar socials for more information. Importantly, if you're anyone you know is queer and involved with video games in some way, please don't be shy. I would love to hear from more queer voices in video games. Your voice is unique and valid and worth sharing with the world. And if you don't want to be on the show or know anyone who's interested, but you know about a cool queer video game or games industry story that's queer related, please let me know. The show's official email is trueavatars.podcast@gmail.com. That's trueavatars.podcast@gmail.com. You can also feel free to reach out via the website or the aforementioned social media pages. Things are tough out there, and queer people need to stick together when we can. Bye, True Avatars. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to speaking with you all again next week. Take care and stay safe.